Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. This Saturday is UFC Vegas 54, and in the main event we have Jan Blachowicz versus Aleksandar Rakić, and this is going to be my full breakdown and prediction for this amazing light heavyweight fight. And this card as a whole, UFC Vegas 54, is not all that great, but this is a very interesting and relevant light heavyweight fight because you have Jan Blachowicz, a former champion, just lost the belt to Glover Teixeira. He's coming into this fight, he has to win this fight because at his age, who's to say if he drops this to Aleksandar Rakić, is he going to make his way back to a light heavyweight title? I don't know if he can. I know it can be done. We've seen Glover Teixeira win the title at age 42, so not saying Jan Blachowicz can't do it. But if he drops two in a row and he loses to a guy like Aleksandar Rakić, and you have all these killers making their way up the division, Magomed Ankalaev, you have Jiří Procházka fighting for the belt, you have Rakić, you have Jamal Hill. I just see this as a do or die kind of for Jan Blachowicz because if he loses this fight, I don't think he'll ever make his way back to a light heavyweight title shot. And for Aleksandar Rakić, he's still young, but this is the biggest step up in competition he's had. And if he wins this fight impressively, there's no doubt in my mind he will be getting the next title shot. He'll be fighting the winner of Glover Teixeira versus Jiří Procházka, which takes place at UFC 275. But there's nothing to say that if Jan Blachowicz wins this fight, let's say he KOs Aleksandar Rakić, there's a chance that Jan Blachowicz could be thrown right back into a title shot. Maybe, who knows, Glover Teixeira might defeat Jiří, Jan might defeat Rakić, and we could get a Glover Teixeira versus Jan Blachowicz 2 for the light heavyweight title. How crazy that would that be? Two guys in their 40s fighting for the belt in a rematch. That would be absolutely insane. But if you look at the tail of the tape for this fight, Jan Blachowicz is currently ranked number 1 in the UFC official rankings. Aleksandar Rakić is ranked number 3. Blachowicz is 39. Rakić is 30. Blachowicz is 6'2". Rakić is 6'4". And they both have a 78-inch reach. You look at Aleksandar Rakić, he could arguably be undefeated in his UFC career. He has that loss to Volkan Ozdemir back in 2019. It was a split decision. I had it for Rakić in this fight. But it is what it is. You can't leave it up to the judges, and that's the style that Rakić has kind of had. His most recent fight was against Thiago Santos at UFC 259, so he's been off for quite a while. He hasn't fought since March of 2021. He defeated Thiago Santos. I thought he won 29-28. It was a kind of close fight, but it was kind of an uneventful, boring fight. It looked like a barn burner compared to Namajunas Esparza too, but the fight was just uneventful. It was more of Rakić just kind of landing leg kicks and just dodging the strikes at Thiago Santos, and Thiago Santos just not being particularly aggressive. But I thought Rakić took that fight. The fight before that, he defeated Anthony Smith, and he actually uses grappling a lot in this fight, so he wanted to mix it up. Just showed that he's a well-rounded fighter. Anthony Smith, I know a lot of people, talk bad about Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith is a true elite light heavyweight, and he is very hard to beat. Rakić has that beautiful head kick KO win over Jimmy Manuwa. He has a TKO win over Devin Clark. But then you're starting to get back in 2018, which those fights really don't matter. But one thing I did notice when looking at Rakic's recent resume is you look at his fight history, and he hasn't been particularly active. He fought twice in 2019, once in 2020, and once in 2021. He has not fought since March 6th of 2021, so he's been out a substantial period of time, roughly 14 months. He's coming to this fight, and I don't know if he's one of those guys that maybe thrives with the time off, or he could be one of those guys where it could come back to haunt him. When you sit out for over a year, there has to be a substantial ring rust. He hasn't shown it yet. He looked good in the Thiago Santos fight, not particularly active, but he's a guy that just looks to win. He looked good in the Anthony Smith fight after being off for a little while, so it hasn't come back to haunt him yet, but this is the biggest step up in competition he's had yet. So you look at Jan Blachowicz, he has been around forever. He's been in the UFC since 2014, but he's been fighting since 2007. And what a career resurgence at one point Jan Blachowicz had. He lost 4 out of his last 5 at one point. He lost to Jimmy Manuwa. He lost to Corey Anderson. He lost to Alexander Gustafsson. He lost to Patrick Cummings. And then he reels off a good win streak. He beats Devin Clark, Jared Cannonier, Jimmy Manuwa, Nikita Krylov. He loses to Thiago Santos, and then he decides to move up to light heavyweight. He brutally KOs Luke Rockhold, which a lot of people going into that fight thought they were kind of giving Luke Rockhold a layup to potentially get a shot at John Jones, and he brutally KOs Luke Rockhold and sends him into a retirement. Then he defeats Jacare Souza, another guy who came up from middleweight. People were thinking, okay, Jacare could kind of become a contender at light heavyweight. It was kind of, there were slim pickings at light heavyweight for contenders, and he beats Jacare Souza by split decision. Then he fights Corey Anderson. Okay, this is the fight where we're like, okay, the winner of this fight might fight Jon Jones. He brutally KOs Corey Anderson in the first round, just clips him. I think it was a massive right hand. It puts Corey Anderson completely out. And then Jon Jones decides, he's having negotiating issues with the UFC. He decides to relinquish his belt, and he says, okay, I'm probably going to move up to heavyweight. So they do a vacant light heavyweight title fight between Jan Blachowicz and Dominic Reyes. And Dominic Reyes had just came off that fight with Jon Jones. People thought Dominic Reyes was the uncrowned light heavyweight champion. And a lot of people thought Dominic Reyes was going to wreck Jan Blachowicz. I actually picked Dominic Reyes. I just thought he was too athletic, too fast, better striker. And I thought he was going to win the fight, and I was pretty confident in a Dominic Reyes pick. Jan Blachowicz went out there and beat the brakes off of Dominic Reyes, brutalized his nose, brutalized his body, and won the title. This was back in September of 2020. Won the title via TKO stoppage in the second round. Then he goes on to Israel Adesanya decides, and I think Israel Adesanya cherry-picked this fight. He said, it's now or never for me to become double champ. He saw Jan Blachowicz as the champion, thought it was an easy win. And I feel like there's been a little bit of revisionist history since this fight. But going into that Adesanya fight, which was at UFC 259, March of 2021, and going into that fight, most people were picking Israel Adesanya. They thought Israel Adesanya had it in the bag. It was going to be an easy fight for him. He was going to outstrike Jan Blachowicz. I personally picked Jan Blachowicz. I thought that his striking was good enough to compete with Adesanya, and I thought the mix of the grappling threat would find him success in this fight. He went out there, he defeated Adesanya via decision. The commentators act like it was a close fight. Jan Blachowicz was outstriking him for the majority of the fight, but he really used his grappling to cement the win. He was able to take Israel Adesanya down, control him on the ground, and win the fight via decision, send Israel Adesanya back to 185 pounds. Then he fights Glover Teixeira at UFC 267. And this fight was weird because it really didn't look like the Jan Blachowicz we had seen for quite a while, because he just looked off. He looked tired even after just the first round. And I don't know if it's one of those fights where, did he have a night off, or was Glover Teixeira just that much better? Going into this fight, I thought Jan Blachowicz would KO Glover Teixeira. I thought that Polish power, that solid striking would Glover Teixeira has been clipped and hurt so many times. I thought now is the time that it's going to catch up to him, and Jan Blachowicz is going to put him out. And Glover Teixeira came out in the first round, cemented an early takedown, controlled him for the entire round. Jan Blachowicz had nothing to offer off his back. Could not get up, just had a closed guard for the majority of the first round. Glover Teixeira did a little bit of damage with ground and pound. Second round comes out. Jan Blachowicz looks a little bit better in the second round. He's clipping Glover on the feet. Glover's continuing to march forward. Jan Blachowicz stuffs a couple takedowns, but eventually Glover Teixeira gets the takedown on Jan Blachowicz. And once he got him down, he treated Jan Blachowicz like an absolute baby on the ground. Full mounted him. Jan Blachowicz tried to roll, give up his back, got flattened out, and was immediately rear naked choked. He tapped so quick, it didn't even look like Glover Teixeira was fully wrenching it. So I just wonder, Jan Blachowicz kind of looked bad in this fight. I'm wondering if he had a night off, or is it just a natural decline as he's getting up there in age? He's an aging fighter, 39 years old, going on 40. But I know Glover, that's weird to say, because Glover Teixeira looked better than ever in this fight. So it's a weird fight to gauge Jan Blachowicz's skill set off, and it's kind of puzzled me when it comes to his skill set, because I just thought he looked so bad. But he's been around for so long. He has 37 pro fights compared to Rakic's 16 pro fights. So this is the definition of one of those fights where the UFC matches up the young with the old. Can the young eat the old, like it constantly happens in this sport? And, you know, when I look at their skill sets and I look at their paths to victory, I see multiple paths to victory for both guys. They actually remind me of each other in their skill sets. I think Rakic is a little bit more technical. I think Jan has a little bit more power, but they're both well-rounded. They're both primarily strikers. They both can grapple, and they both have decent stamina as well. So they kind of remind me of each other, but for this fight, you kind of have to look at the age, and for me, that's the most telling factor in this fight. I just see Jan Blachowicz's age. I see how good Rakic has looked. Even though he hasn't been particularly impressive, he goes out there and he wins fights, and he barely gets touched in those fights. He could arguably be undefeated within the UFC. That Volkan Ozdemir fight, he should have probably won that fight. And I am going to go with Aleksandar Rakic via decision. I think he probably could get a late round stoppage over Jan Blachowicz, but I just think Rakic is too big, too strong, too well-rounded. I think that the age factor, the speed factor, I just think Jan Blachowicz, really, if he wants to win this fight, he's going to have to outstrike Aleksandar Rakić for 5 rounds. I don't think he's going to put Rakic out cold. Aleksandar Rakić has never been KO'd or TKO'd in his entire MMA career, and I don't think it's going to start with Jan Blachowicz. Rakic is just too young, too strong, too fast. I think he's going to come out. He's not going to fight a particularly crowd-pleasing style. He's going to fight on points. He's going to pump the jab. He's going to be chopping Jan Blachowicz's legs, and Rakic has some of the nastiest leg kicks in the division. He brutalized Thiago Santos' legs. He brutalized Anthony Smith's legs. He's shown it time and time again, and I just don't think Jan Blachowicz is going to have the speed to be able to clip Rakic. So I think Jan Blachowicz really has to probably bank on a KO in this fight. I think he could win the decision. Maybe if it's the Jan Blachowicz we've seen in the past against Dominic Reyes with kicks to the body, an assortment of attacks. But I just think Rakic is going to be able to get out of the way. And I think even if Jan Blachowicz is close on the striking with Rakic, or maybe even beating Rakic in the striking by a slight possibility, I think that Rakic can mix in the grappling. I think Rakic will be able to take Jan Blachowicz down, take him down, control him on the ground, similar to what he did in the Anthony Smith fight. And I just don't see Jan Blachowicz being able to pull this off. And I think I see a future where we see guys like Rakic, Magomed Ankalaev, Jiří Procházka, Jamal Hill, all fighting over that 205 belt while Glover Teixeira and Jan Blachowicz after they retire. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. I have Aleksandar Rakic by decision. I think it's going to be a relatively boring decision, but I'm still excited for the fight. I'm hoping maybe Aleksandar Rakic, he kind of sees Jiří Procházka, that exciting style has rewarded him with 2 fights in the UFC, getting a title shot against Glover Teixeira. I'm hoping Rakic tries to turn it up in this fight and maybe look for a 3rd or 4th round TKO when Jan Blachowicz starts to slow down. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.